Welcome back to Healing in Truth. I know. I've gotten a lot of questions. Where are you? What happened? What happened to the podcasts? Are you okay? You've been kind of quiet lately. The answer is yes, I have been good, very good actually. I needed a sabbatical. I needed a rest. Because I'll be honest with you, I was doing way too much, and the Lord called my attention to it. And so I asked Him to let me enter into a season of rest, and He did. And so now I am back, refreshed, renewed, strengthened, encouraged, and ready to come back for season 2 for one of the most important series that I will be teaching on. You may be wondering, what is that? It's one that has impacted and affected millions of people globally, and it is church trauma. We are going to talk all about church trauma, church hurt, unhealthy leadership patterns. What does that look like? What's happening in the church these days? Because let me tell you, the Lord is deeply grieved. And I think we are at a place where we are in danger because there is so much nonsense and foolishness happening in the church setting that it is leading so many people out of the church. And that is a huge problem. And so I'm going to be talking about multiple topics about church trauma. As a matter of fact, let's run through the topics now. And if there are any that I am missing, please, guys, in the comments, tell me, because I want to make sure that I cover every topic and I leave no stone unturned. Okay? So the first one we're going to tackle is spiritual abuse. We're going to talk about what spiritual abuse looks like in the church. It happens every single day. I have been a witness to it. I have experienced it as well. And we're going to break this down when we talk about manipulation and what happens when we manipulate the text of God out of context. What happens when we manipulate people financially and in many other ways. We're going to talk about gaslighting in the church, controlling people through fear and shame, silencing people from questioning what's going on, why is this happening? Or on the flip side, telling people, hey, you're more than welcome to come to me, talk to me, express anything you want to me, and then people do, and then nothing is done about it. That's a problem. We're going to talk about enforcing loyalty to leaders without questioning what's going on. Dangerous. We're going to talk about overreaching into people's personal lives and where the boundary should be when it comes to church and home life. We're going to talk about forcing confessions and public repentance in order to shame people. We're going to talk about using God's will to excuse harm. This is going to come when we talk about abuse that is handled in the church and swept under the rug in the church. So these are the people who may come up and say, hey, Deacon so-and-so, my husband has been hitting me. And the pastor does nothing about it, but instead makes you feel very wrong to even say anything and leaves the deacon to continue to operate. We're going to talk about things like that. We're going to talk about gender-based controls and the churches that say, hey, women really can't do anything in the church, and what the Bible truly says about that. We're going to talk about threats of excommunication and shunning. That's a big one, and one that happens way too often. We're going to talk about spiritualizing things like mental health struggles when we need a natural response and a spiritual response. And then we're going to cover other episodes. That's just going to be one episode broken down. But then I have many things being blackballed in the church. And yes, that happens. We're going to talk about favoritism in the church. We're going to talk about favoritism in the worship team and the worship team drama. I have been a part of many churches throughout my life, and one thing that is consistently there is worship team drama. It's time that we grow up out of that. We're going to talk all about that. We're going to talk about leaders who are mean and rude, who don't know how to approach situations in love, truth, and wisdom, who don't know how to be gentle in ways when it is required to be, but that offends with what they say. We're going to talk about your leaders and pastors who fall into sin. We've gotten into a place where we're seeing it a lot more often. God is exposing these things for a reason. And you, as part of the church, need to understand how to handle it and what the process should look like for that person. Because we're not here to just throw people out. We're here to restore people. And so we're going to enter into the conversation of what does true, healthy restoration look like and accountability. And we're going to say away with moral failure and call it what it is, falling into sin. Because if I fell into sin and I'm a lay person, but you're a pastor and yours is described as moral failure, we have a problem here. We're going to talk about racism and politics in the church and how so many churches are silent on very key issues in which the Bible talks about that we need to actually speak up on. And we're going to talk about why those churches don't speak up. We're going to talk about what happens when you leave a church and how it becomes us versus them. I tell you, I have been through different churches throughout my life. And I'll be sharing my church process, by the way, as well. And how we need to mature in this area because we're one body, one church. It doesn't matter if someone is there today and not there tomorrow. We are still one body, one church, united together. It is not a us versus them thing. We're going to talk about what happens when we establish and place immature and unprepared leaders who don't know how to teach the word, who don't even know how to pray or intercede, people who are not emotionally mature and can't handle situations the way that they need to be handled. Then we're going to talk about leaders being placed by man instead of God and the dangers of that and what happens when these kind of things happen. We're going to talk about idolatry of leaders and what it's the difference between honor and idolizing a pastor or preacher. We're going to talk about celebrity Christians and why that's even a thing now and why it should not be a thing now. We're going to talk about family ministries. Now, I have been on both sides of this. I have been the PK and I have been in the church where I've served alongside families. I've been on both sides in multiple ways, and we're going to break down what that looks like and what healthy family ministry looks like. And we're also going to talk about the pressures that come with being the pastor, the family of the pastor, the PKs. We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about leaders who are jealous, envious, and in competition, especially older leaders that don't want to let go. They don't want to impart wisdom. They don't want the next generation to do better than them. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about how to handle church conflict and drama because, guys, it happens. We are people. We are imperfect. Things come up. Preferences and communications and things get skewed, and we need to talk about how to handle it biblically and emotionally and mentally maturely. We're going to talk about burnout in ministry. How do we get there? How do we get out of there? How do we make sure we don't step into that again? When is it time to take a step back? We're going to talk about leaders who lack accountability, in which there's not a process in the church where it really works the way that it needs to make sure that leaders are untouchable. That should not be the case. And then lastly, we are going to talk about leaders who are prideful and entitled and abuse the power and the influence that God has given them to be. We got a lot to cover. We are going to be here probably for a few months in this church series. But as I was praying to God, I was saying, Lord, my goal for this church series that you have given to me is this. One, that the scales from the eyes of those who are watching and listening will fall like they did for Saul. And you will realize what you have normalized and accepted in the church that is truly against God and unhealthy. And number two, that if you've been hurt by the church in any way, that you would feel validated by the things that were done. And if you walked away from the church, that you'd be willing to give it another chance so that we can come together in fellowship, because not every church is like this. If there's one lie that the enemy likes to perpetuate when it comes to us being church hurt, is every church is like this. The truth is, it is not. There are many churches like this. And it's time to use wisdom and discernment to be able to say, Lord, where am I? Am I growing here? Is this the right church for me? Is this church healthy? Is this church biblical? Are they doing things in the way that you have established them to be? And we're going to talk about that, because we hear no church is perfect, and that is true, right? But at the same time, we want to make sure that we are in a place where God abides, and God abides in healthy churches. That's just the reality. And so we want to make sure that you are going to the right church, whatever church that is, but let it be where God placed you and where you will stay. Or if God is saying, hey, it's time to move, it's time to move. And one of the things that we need to stop with is being silent in the church. Why? Because oftentimes when things come up or things arise, we say, hey, don't talk about it. Don't gossip. Don't slander. You're going to bring division if you bring this up. If you're going to say, and that is a different way of saying what happens in this house stays in this house. And that's why so many more people are harmed in the making, because what we speak as truth is known as division and gossip when it's not. And so in the Bible, God reveals everything about everyone. There is nothing hidden there. That's for a purpose, okay? We need to be honest about what's going on. We need to be wise about what's going on. And we need to warn others about what's going on. I'm coming to you from this series after studying the story of Josiah and how he started to reform the church after many before him just continued. They were placed and continued the same patterns. And Josiah said, ripped his clothes off. He said, I'm done with this. We're not doing this anymore. So hear me when I say, I'm done with this. We are not doing this anymore. It's time for you to heal in truth. I can't wait for my first episode. I can't wait for you to join me. So please share this with someone who may need to hear it. I pray the Lord encourage you. I pray the Lord comfort you if you are hurting right now. And I pray that you be strengthened to continue this walk, that you will persevere and endure to the end. In Jesus' name. See you soon.